In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
What makes a man superstitious? His religion or a lack of it? There's witchcraft in Pennsylvania and wherever else you want to find it in America. Preposterous? I don't believe it. Impossible. Nothing to it. Well, I know where. They say it's true that she's an old witch or he's a devil. Saying like these may be heard on all sides when the subject is brought up. There may have been witchcraft of a sort a few generations ago, but it is still practiced among the Pennsylvania Germans. It's not an uncommon query when strangers come to the Keystone State. Quite often, yes, more frequently than not, you will get an affirmative reply from those who profess to know something about such matters. Furthermore, there is considerable bias, in fact, for the general belief that witchcraft still prevails in one of the most enlightened states and sections of the country. But why does it hang on? Why? Persistency in any form of witchcraft as it prevails in the minds of men and women today is that they haven't taken steps to inquire into the subject as to whether there is really any such thing as a witch and what it might be. The Realness of Witchcraft in America by Monroe Aurand Jr. 1942. The copyright has not been renewed.
The Abracast. Occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Recording from hydroxychloroquine zone, 2, 1. I lost track of all these locations where I've been recording. But here I am, sitting here behind the microphone, looking at my show observer. I got a ice cold mason jar here full of the gin jihad. I'm covered in hand sanitizer and still testing positive for COVID-19. I'm John Towers and this is the Abracast. Thank you guys for joining me this evening. I appreciate it. A few things to get started. It's August, so the perk for this month for the $5 and $10 supporters is the wizard card for the set of tarot cards I designed. So it's an extra card, but it has to do with Aleister Crowley and the Thoth deck. So I decided to give you give an extra wizard card, and it's a cool card. It's a skeleton who's finely attired in a suit, sitting on a winged back chair, and the symbols of the four suits of the tarot surround him, but they surround him in the wrong order. You can check out the design in the back of the card, which basically is encoded the mechanics of the lesser and the major arcana codes according to Pappas. I put them as the design of the back of the card. I can't wait to get the card. I'm literally checking the printer checking my printers every other day to see if they've fucking shipped these cards yet, because I can't wait to get it. The Fellow Craft episode, which is the exclusive episode for Patreon or Subscribe Star this month, as we're starting our examination into the immortal aristocrat Count Saint Germain. It's a fun episode. And there'll be at least a part 2 next month. And what else do I need to talk about? The Abercast is not just about wizards and blowjobs, the new t-shirt. So on the first episode of the week, the episode that drops on Sunday, is one thing, but then I do at least one bonus episode a week so far. I'm kind of tying in current events to conspiracies or to history. Because there's so many wild things going on in the world today, it's easy for me to kind of tie them into the things that are happening today, the Chinese Cultural Revolution, or the things that are happening today, tie them into, the Blood Week in Paris. So those episodes, are a little more current eventy. So I decided today we're going to talk about witchcraft in America. I need to build up my witchcraft section of the feature topic link. So we're going to drag you guys through some witchcraftism. Before we get started, go ahead and raise your glass, whatever you got in there. You got your water, you got your power drink, you got your purple stuff. What's that purple stuff? You got your hydroxychloroquine in there, or if you like me, you just have your favorite weapon of mass distraction. I have a Jin Jihad, of course, this evening. And just join me in thanking my Patreon Subscribe Star supporters. Thank you guys. Without you guys, can do this. I'd be doing something else as I'm isolated in my studio for going on 3 fucking weeks. Is that right? Going on 4 weeks, maybe. I don't know. Here's to you guys. Let us carefully examine what we can learn about them as defined by the Century Dictionary. Witch, noun, a man or a woman, a person, a man or a woman, a person of either sex, given to the black art, a sorcerer, a conjurer, a wizard. Just like my wizard card. A wizard. Later, and more particularly, a woman supposed to have formed a compact with the devil or other evil spirits, and to be able, by their aid, to operate supernaturally. One who practices sorcery or enchantment, a sorceress. An old, ugly, and crabbed or malignant woman, a hag, a crone. It's a term of abuse. A fascinating woman, especially a young woman, possessed of a particular or peculiar attractions, whether of beauty or manners, bewitching or charming young woman or girl. It's a charm or a spell. So as I'm married to a witch, I can tell you that at least 2 of these definitions are 100% true. A reader will note, and it might be generally recognized, that not only an ugly woman, but a young, attractive one, too, can bewitched or be bewitching to do things to you. Oh, yes. This is a radical departure from the general belief that only old women and sometimes old men can bewitch. These refer to witches in the flesh. Then there are those which cannot be seen, but according to some people be felt, i.e. they can do bodily harm, though they are only of the spirit. The Century Dictionary says still further regarding an apparition. Noun, an appearance, epiphany, also attendance, the act of appearing or coming into sight. Appearance, the state of being visible, visibility. That which appears or becomes visible. An appearance, especially of a remarkable or phenomenal kind, specifically a ghostly appearance, a specter or a phantom. Now, the usual sense of the word. It will be served to keep the record straight, to review briefly the meaning of superstition. It's a noun, an ignorant or irrational fear of that which is unknown or mysterious, especially such fear of some invisible existence or existences, specifically religious belief or practice, or both founded on irrational fear or credulity. Excessive or unreasonable religious scruples produced by credulous fears. Where there is any religion, the devil will plant superstition, says Burton in An Anatomy of Melancholy. Lowell says in Among My Books, first series, page 92, a superstition, as its name imports, is something that has been left over like unfinished business from one session of the world's Wittenigmot to the next. One cannot be sure at all as to how many sessions of the world's Wittenigmot we have already had. But whatever the number, we still have the fears of men and women scarcely alleviated in all history of the world. Life after death, then what? We have assurances of all kinds, to be sure, but as individuals, we have yet to test these assurances. So it sounds like this Lowell guy is talking about karma, or reincarnation, unfinished business, as they would say. I do not think I have ever run across this word, Wittenigmot. I've never run across this word. I just imagine it just means this section of your life, maybe. Well, being a responsible podcast host, I looked up what this means. And I think that it doesn't mean, I don't understand how it means how it means in context of what Lowell is saying here. According to Wikipedia, the Wittenigmot is an assembly of the ruling class whose primary function was to advise the king and whose membership was composed of the most important noblemen in England, both ecclesiastic and secular. So I'm just going to go with the guys talking about what I said it was. Unless it's something like periodical. Like maybe it's just a way to mark time through our lives. One session of the world's council to the next. One cannot be sure at all of how many sessions we have already had, but whatever the number, we still have the fears of men and women scarcely alleviated in all history of the world. After life, death, then what? We have assurances of all kinds, to be sure, but as individuals we have yet to test these assurances. The philosophy of many of the centuries that instilled both hope and fear into the hearts of men left him with the two well-known spirits to swing and sway his thoughts. As we see the swaying of the leaves on the trees. Frankly, there can be any religion or philosophy which does not preach or teach that there is good and bad, both. We have angels, we must have witches, or some other equivalent to offset other forces. We have in Pennsylvania, and in America, many men and women who belong to the same church as their parents and their grandparents, which brings out the thought we have in mind. What was good enough for them is good enough for me. Mosaic influence still impending. Our social and religious backgrounds are primarily Mosaic wherever we find ourselves in Western civilization. Yet Moses, whoever he was, had to rescue what he could in philosophy and truth from the past fraught with pagan ideas. And many of these old pagan ideas are today still our ideas. It requires a little knowledge to satisfy the average person that is very difficult, if not impossible, to put one's fingers on a spirit. Get her, Ray! Get her. That was your whole plan. Yet, isn't that what we do when we dissect such ideas as witches, angels, and souls, and tell our friend that we have been, or others have been visited by angels or witches, or that a certain soul actually went to heaven or to hell? It is certainly that men and women over-imagine too many ideas dealing with things and ideas not actually of the solid earth, or that cannot be taken apart and analyzed. As defined by the dictionary, we are in hearty accord the conclusion that witchcraft is derived from superstitions, suggestions, imaginations, or pipe dreams of simple folk. Now, simple folk are not always to be indicated as being persons who do not agree with the personal views of the reader or the writer. There are many professional men and women whose manners and conduct in life suggest to the layman that there cannot be simpleness among the learned too. Witchcraft and the beliefs in evil spirits came to America long ago. Witches active in the Middle Ages in Europe. There were great activity of witchcraft. Then came the time when the popes took cognizance over the practices to which the laymen of the church and the outsiders were resorting. Certain functions generally received for the priesthood. How dare they? Following papal bulls in 1233 and 1484, thousands upon thousands of innocent people were put to death, as they are in Europe today, because they happen to live in a time some master of misguided religious or political philosophy carried little whether the people would be better off dead than alive. He's talking about Nazi Germany. This is fascinating. Wow. That's interesting. You know, I started the show off by talking about the not just wizards and blowjobs episodes of the show, where we tie in these current events into things that we talk about here in the show, which isn't all just the occult and stuff. We talk about philosophy. We talk about psychology. We talk about magic and the occultist psychology, paranormal psychology, but we talk a lot about history too, and conspiracy theories, not like ancient aliens, ancient astronauts, pyramids on Mars kind of secret space forces. We talk about conspiracy theories that are right out in the open, right? Like how CIA controls the media, Project Mockingbird, and all of this stuff. We talk about all this stuff, and we could see it kind of unfolding in front of our faces every day. And we were talking last I guess it would have been Friday's episode, we were talking about the new Pope and the Catholic shift to socialism. And we were talking about this gigantic human rights violations that are going on with these Muslims in China. The Uyghurs, they're called. So they're loading these Uyghurs up, and they found a shipping container full of like 13 tons of human hair that were harvested off these Chinese Muslims. And we were talking about how the Pope won't say anything bad about this. We have video, I think it's drone footage. We have video of them loading these shaved Uyghurs into train cars and taking them to who knows where. And the Pope, the human rights, no one's talking about the human rights violation. And everyone that is talking about it is talking about it as as equivalent to like the Holocaust, because we see, the Jews on the train cars going to Auschwitz and this kind of stuff. So I just have to point out the synchronicity. It's so weird that they're talking about burning witches, and this guy who's writing this book in 1942 is referring to burning witches to what was happening to the Jews in their current time. I'm sorry. It was very interesting. I just kind of have to make a note. I am sorry to blindside the whole episode for a few minutes. I just have to take a note. I'm going to get back to it here. All right, back to the witchcraft stuff. There was considerable division among people relative to the term witch. Some will want to class it with devils or demons. There may be other forms which some would say to employ to describe the opposite of an angel. So now, as far as most of us are concerned, the latter have been described largely through artists' conceptions, which, as in the case of devils, leave much in doubt to the imagination as well. Europeans knew about witches, the earliest settlers of America: Spanish, English, Dutch, the Swedes, the French, the Germans, etc. all had working knowledge, generally speaking, of the religious backgrounds, especially respecting good and bad angels and witches. Most of the books brought to America by either of the above races, by either of the above race. Okay, so he's just talking about the difference between Europeans, or of a religious nature, having, of course, that didn't age well, by the way, sir, having, of course, general rules for religious behavior, if not the moral and civil behavior as well. Today, as in the earliest colonial days, it matters little whether one gets his religious knowledge from public schools or parochial schools, in the home, or directly from religious publications. The knowledge available to all, even to the unlearned or the unschooled, is so widespread as to convey certain religious philosophies to the layman. He doesn't have to know the law of God, nor of man to understand. I'm sorry. He doesn't have to know the law of God nor of man to understand that the normal laws of society forbid that he should kill his fellow man. Some are thus held in restraint, but when a man wants to kill, he'll do it. But one of the sins of society is that so many men and women of sound mental knowledge and able to reason are killers, and who escape the just punishments of their crime, extenuating circumstances, passion, mentally unsound, and drunkenness. in this day and age, we could add a few more of these things, right? The Twinkie defense. I had my period. What are the silly ones? My coffee was too hot. There's no label on these cigarettes. We would like to use a remark attributed to the late President Lincoln, which propriety forbids our using here. It isn't often that his language may be too expressive, even if only about horses. I don't know what all this is about. Bible basis for strong. It's interesting that this book that was written in 1942, he just assumes that his reader is going to know what this obscure Lincoln quote is, that he could just allude to it and people would know, oh, that goes right here, even though he's not going to write it. That's interesting. Most people wouldn't know anything that Lincoln wrote today. They might know 20 years ago, or I don't even know what it is. 7 years ago. People were like, I don't even know what that means, let alone who fucking wrote it. So I think that's interesting. I think it goes a long way to say what's happened to teaching history, teaching anything, you know. My cigarette package warning label wasn't big enough. Bible basis for strong beliefs. If a Christian anywhere, particularly a Protestant Christian, wishes to know the fundamental law on behavior, he sooner or later goes to the scripture for light. Surely the reader will not question our ethics in bringing this phrase of the subject to anyone's attention. Reverend P. Miriam Sims, Ph.D., in his very enlightening and comprehensive account of the Bible in America, says the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church differ in many things, but nowhere more widely than the place they assign the Bible, and the right of private interpretation. By this means they, the former, think to avoid the danger involved. So this is the Hierophant card, right, in my tarot card deck. It's left to either, this learned man of the church. It's a very Catholic idea that only this clerical class, this religious functionary, this highfalutin priest can figure it out for you and dole it out. Or this Gnostic idea, right? Which is where I fall. My dick gets hard with all this Gnostic talk. It's this Gnostic idea that you don't need a priest, you don't need a learned man, and you don't need any of that shit to figure it out. It's an individual experience, which I guess would be the Protestant side of this, even though the Protestants have, they still have like a hierarchy and like what's accepted and what's not accepted. It's just not so rigid of a structure. I'm just talking about the overall concept of what he's saying. There's a difference between these two points. And the Bible, where does the Bible fit in these 2 points? To me, it seems like it fits more of the textbook version on the hierophantic side, where the clergy would use it to explain to you, where on the other side, I'm going to stop using the Protestant metaphor that they lay out here because I'm pushing it way farther to the Gnostic side, which is the personal interpretation. Your individual experience leads you to your path of salvation. And it's very powerful. Anytime you put those two ideas together, I think it's very powerful and very telling. I'm not trying to shit on the Catholic Church, even though I just spent 2 weeks shitting on the Catholic Church. Well, 1 week. The first week of the anti-communist stuff was all good. It didn't get bad until this new guy jumped in here. However, with all this juxtaposition between World War II, maybe we could go back and revisit that too. It reminds me of Dogma, where George Carlin like, okay, wait a minute, mistakes were made.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Hello and welcome to the History Obscura podcast. This is the place where history's forgotten secrets are unshelved from my vast, firelit book repository and reintroduced to the world. Learn stories of space exploration, medieval royals, smugglers, martyrs, and monsters. Subscribe to History Obscura for a fresh tale every Saturday and Tuesday night.
The old-time conception once held, well nigh universally among Christians, is that the Bible is the very Word of God, verbally dedicated by the Lord Himself, and infallible in its every statement. Has been responsible for more misuse of the Bible than all of the influences put together. Therefore, with entire consistency, thou shalt not suffer a witch to live, Exodus 22:18, was made the basis of the persecution of the witches in all its horrors. The scripture was the chief authority for the execution of the witches everywhere, and it was only modified conception of the Bible can release the church of the obligation of witch hunting today. Changing the translation to sorceress does not affect the authority of the commandment. Stories of the persecution of witches and that of the Inquisition could be written only with a pen dipped in the blood, in the tears, and yet it came legitimately from the old-time conception and interpretation of the Bible. All persecutions by Christians in America and elsewhere are supported always by quotations from the Bible. And so, because it is true that a vast majority of the early settlers of America were men who read the Bible, are imparted its truth and the lessons of all kinds to their children, and no less to their grandchildren, we have today in America a hodgepodge, which was Europe. The various European... I'm going to edit it. Okay. The various European people have handed to each succeeding generation their pet notion and everything. Do we know any Irish who are not in love with the old Irish traditions? The Slavs with Slavish, the Norse with the Norse, the Latin with the Latin. You can answer this from your own observations. The Anglo-Saxon is proud of the notions and the ideals he can recall. And so is the Jew. And so is black... African Americans. Traditions are hard to change or forget. That N-word was not the real bad N-word. I just didn't feel comfortable saying it in today's day and age. Okay, so is the Jew, and so is the Negro. Traditions are hard to change or forget. There, I fucking said it. Okay, are you happy? I read it. Okay, are you happy? Today we are reaping, as each generation does, the portion of knowledge which is sown early in the dawn of history, and it ripens and falls into the minds of the young and the old everywhere, and we shall accordingly stand or fall by our decisions to be rational or irrational, orthodox or unorthodox, Catholic or Protestant. In my remix of this, it would be Catholic or Gnostic. Would it be spoon-fed or an individual experience? Puritans raised hell with the witches in the early days. Salem witches were hanged. The witches of our own New England were largely the development of two serious interpretations of a biblical law, an injunction, actually by law. Authorities, under the pressures of church leaders, look, we got church politics going on right here in our story, took numerous lives of innocent people. Religion caused of the troubles. One can hardly picture witchcraft conditions in those early days as being so serious that nearly every man, woman, and child and everything in the catalog of human knowledge was suspected of being a witch or in aiding one. To avoid being accused as a witch, one had to get the jump on the other fellow. He put that in quotes. Let me redo this. To avoid being accused as a witch, one had to get, quote, the jump on the other fellow, unquote, and accuse him first. Montague Summers, in the Geography of Witchcraft, page 256, says, there could be no doubt that the settlers in New England were not only firm believers in every kind of witchcraft, but well primed and every malevolent superstition that could command itself to their prejudiced and tortured minds. They looked for the devil round every corner and saw Satan's hand in every mishap and every accident. The devil, in fact, played a larger part in their theology than a god. The master of the ages, amen. They were obsessed with hell and damnation, and their sky was cloudy and overset. Their horizons were girded with predestination and the awful consciousness of sin. John Wesley was a firm believer in witchcraft, and in 1768 he writes in his journal, quote, it is true that the English in general have given up all accounts of witches and apparitions as mere old wives' fables, and I'm sorry for it. With my last breath, I will bear testimony against giving up to infidels one great proof of the invisible world, and I mean that of witchcraft and of apparitions, confirmed by the testimony of all ages and the ages of the ages. Can I get an amen? In New England, one person claimed that the devil frequently had carnal knowledge of her body. That means he fucked her for unlawful carnal knowledge. That's what it means. Today, houses are still secured as well as barns day and night against witches. Windows, blinds, or shutters to keep out all light, and some occupants have been known to go out very seldom after dark. The darkness that harbors all sorts of things only through imagination. Today, some can hear witches in chains or shutters rattling at night, chairs or floors, creaking noises in the walls, attics or cellars, the lowing of cattle, the howling of dogs, earth lights in fields or woods or in the cemetery, shadows in the moonlight, strange odors, the noise of expansion or contraction of pottery or steam pipes, the noise caused by mice, rats, and slight vibrations caused by drafts. Likewise, Pennsylvania has been singled out for years as a stamping ground for these same kinds of devils research. However, fails to discover any witches looking any different from the people the reader and the writer knows most and intimately. Now and then, an old man or woman may be identified as one of those witch doctors or the powwow doctors, but in New England, well-known citizens were pointed out as witches. Sidney George Fisher in Men and Women and Manners in Colonial Time, Volume 2, Philadelphia, 1898, says, "In former times, no sect of religion and no class of life had been free from it." He's talking about witchcraft. More than 4,000 books had been written about it and had assailed the highest intellectuals as well as the lowest, and Springer estimates that in the 15th century, 100,000 persons were executed for it in Germany alone. Again, we have this Germany through line in the episode, and that during the Christian epoch, 9 million men and women were put to death for the supposed crime. Those who doubted were reminded of the Witch of Endor in the Old Testament and the laws of Moses against witchcraft. I'm sorry, whenever I see the Witch of Endor, I think of those really shitty Ewok movies from the 80s. So after Return of the Jedi, Lucasfilm did, I think there were 2 of them. 2 Ewok made-for-television movies, and they were terrible. I don't see them on Disney Plus when I scroll through the Star Wars section, so I don't know what happened to them, but they were all like Ewoks and all this, and I believe there was a witch in one of them. I remember being like, is this the Witch of Endor from the fucking Moses thing? What the fuck? And the books of the Middle Ages, I'm sorry for more Star Wars bullshit. I just pile it in everywhere I can find it. In the books of the Middle Ages, it was asserted over and over again that to doubt the existence of witchcraft is to deny the holy scripture and to refuse confidence in the general belief of all mankind. No one was safe. The slightest peculiarity in manner or in obscure chance remark that could be given as a double meaning was enough to secure a conviction. Many who had lost some household article or cattle, or who had suffered misfortune or sickness, were allowed to relate their trouble before the court as evidence that one of their neighbors had bewitched them. When a person was accused, his only hope of escape was in confession, and this process manufactured witches very fast. Even in this awful delusion, the Puritan mind still worked by its close reasoning process. The few who were opposed to punishing for witchcraft argued that it might be possible for a devil to get into a person and to make a witch of him against his will. If an ordinary man had said, does anything supernatural, it must be by the aid of the devil. In Pennsylvania, the authorities always gave, and today give, the accused the great benefit of the doubt, either as to the commission of a crime of witchcraft or to the mental state of the persons involved. Is witchcraft in the Commonwealth then so very terrible? Mary Baker Eddy, The Witchcraft, Howard W. Haggard, M.D., and Devils, Drugs, and Doctors, page 312 to 313, Blue Ribbon Books Incorporated, tells how Mary Eddy Baker in her own day, put a lot of faith in the powers of malicious animal magnetism, the Kavorka. And just another term for witchcraft, Miss Eddy, according to the newspaper account, declared that her husband's death was caused by this magnetism, the opposite of faith healing, Dr. Haggard further states. Thus, when Mary Eddy assigned the hysterical ailments to malicious animal magnetism and asked the courts of Salem in 1778 to punish alleged persecutors, she was attempting to revive witchcraft and the punishment of witches. But along with this black magic, she introduced white magic. We'll pick this up next time. I'm John. This is the Advertise. Please consider supporting the show on Patreon or Subscribestar. If you can't do that, I get it. But please consider leaving this show a 5-star rate and review. Don't put any of the 3-star bullshits, 1-star bullshits. I'm suffering enough. Whenever I talk about communism, I get dogpiled. Bros, help me. Antifa's attacking me. I'm John. This is the Advertise. I'll let Hill do the rest. I'll see you in a few days.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Advertise and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Advertise. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Advertise. The price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I am proud of the Advertise, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you could sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.